Hello YouTube! We're back again with another video. Today we are talking about some dungeon tuning that has been implemented into the state of the game on this weekly reset. And some things have been changed, most notably stuff to like Plaguefall, Sanguine Depths, Necrotic Wake got like gutted, and yeah. So let's talk about some of those changes and what they really mean. So first thing that was changed for this week is now the manifestation of pride sees through stealth and invisibility effects. So for those who don't know, people have been recently shadow melding off the pride, so they decided to add true sight to the manifestation of pride. This is not really going to change anything. You can still meld off the pride. Groups are already like leaping out of range and getting out of line of sight with the pride as well, which are notable ways that they can be able to avoid and get around the true sight shenanigans. So this is really not going to change anything. The pride having true sight, you're still able to meld it. This is not going to change anything for the MDI. This is not going to change anything for teams that are doing this on live. It's not going to do realistically anything at all, except for after you wipe to the pride, you're not going to be able to like walk back in shroud or something. So that I guess that's the only real thing that it's going to do. If they wanted to make sure that this change did something with shadow melding prides, they would need to change how true sight works and like not allow mobs that have true sight effects to be melded. But like they are not doing that. That's not what they're doing in this case. So this change likely does nothing for basically anybody. Maybe this affects like one or two prides during MDI total, but not enough to really matter. All right, so next up we have Plaguefall. And first off, we have Margrave, which is the final boss in Plaguefall. The Devoted ads, which is the slow walkie boys, have their health and damage reduced by 40%. I think healers are the most likely to get insta-gibbed by these mobs because they have healing threat on them. So they've reduced their health and damage by 40%, allowing you to kind of kill them a little bit quicker. I don't know exactly how much this really affects the fight because the Devoted ads only spawn in the final phase too. And you have like strategies where people are just lusting the final phase. But maybe you will now lust on pull with pride or something like that because they reduced the cast frequency of the infectious rain during the final phase. This is why you were lusting the final phase, is because the infectious rain cast was like you're getting like three of them off and stuff like that, and it was just like not super reasonable to be able to deal with all of it at once. But maybe now there's a slightly different strategy. I'm not too convinced at this point. And then they've slightly adjusted the timing of Plague Crash, so there's a little bit more time between tentacle slaps. For certain combos, I think like the box combo where it's like the three on the side and the three on the top, that one was probably the most difficult one to manage from my opinion. So maybe this is going to be a little bit better for that now. I don't think that they touched Margrave too terribly much. They really should have considered hitting the amount of damage the Infectious Rain does. The Infectious Rain damage is definitely a bit out of line, but without any notable nerfs to that or how Domina's ads work, this isn't a huge nerf to Plaguefall as a whole. And this doesn't, I don't really feel like this makes this even that much easier on Tyrannical or whatever. All right, Sanguine Depths, which needed some real tuning. Let's see if we actually ended up getting it. So first off, they fixed an issue where the Chamber Sentinels would fail to contribute enemy force count on Mythic Keystone difficulty. Okay, that seems good. I don't see an issue with that. Crixus the Voracious, which is the first boss. Severing Smash damage reduced by 20% on all difficulties. Severing Smash is what summons the orbs. It's the direct hit from like the knockback. And then the Essence Absorption, which is the absorbing of the balls, has also been reduced by 20% on Mythic difficulty. No, they did not enough for this dungeon enough. Crixus, I don't know, man. This Essence Absorption shit is still like one-shotting people, probably. And you're still only able to eat like 2 orbs at once. Like, I feel like for this fight, Crixus in particular, the difficulty should be, do you absorb the orbs? It shouldn't be, why are the orbs doing 60% of my health per orb absorbed? And this fight is definitely a little bit too rough. I still would suspect that groups are going to potentially outrange the Severing Smash damage and orb drop. That's what people have been doing recently. That's like 100-yard range, so they've been running completely out of range to be able to deal with it. And it's like, it feels very much like Mana Devourer, where it's like one ball touches the boss and you wipe, but at the same time, like, you can't soak the orbs too quickly, otherwise you die as well. I don't know. It's really oppressive, and I think it needs a slightly more targeted nerf as opposed to just reducing the damage by the Severing Smash and the Essence Absorption. Executor Tarvald. Fleeting Manifestation health reduced by 20%. A good nerf, but not enough. Again, it's the same issue as Crixus. It's like, this in isolation is not a bad nerf. So the Fleeting Manifestation is the ad that pulses AoE. The real issue on Tarvald is the overlap between the manifestation plus the castigation casts, and like if you don't have a hunter or an immunity, or the manifestation isn't dying immediately, you just get insta-killed, right? And there's nothing for you to really be able to recover whenever you have them both out at once. And it's like the 20% health thing is fine, and it's a good change, and it allows you to burn the ad, and it allows you to burn the ad quicker and like have less frequency of the overlaps. But ultimately the problem is the damage from the castigation, and it's like they need to probably either re-nerf the Fleeting Manifestation's pulsing AoE, or they need to re-nerf the castigation damage again. All right, so next up is Spires of Ascension. Lakesys, Klotos, and Astronos no longer are affected by mythic keystone affixes that trigger on death. Example, Sanguine. I mean, they also probably don't drop Spiteful now. These three ads are the angels that are in front of Devos, which is the final boss of the instance. And then Lakesys, Klotos, and Astronos, Oppression now increases damage taken by 1% per application was 2%. I mean, these are both pretty good changes. I don't know if you... I still think you're probably saving your spear for Klotos as the last angel to end up doing, but I don't know if now you have to blow like everything, like Bloodlust and shit like that. They definitely need to still look at the damage that Klotos is like... I don't know what the name of the damaging AoE effect is called, but they definitely need to probably tune that down a little bit as well, because that plus the oppression is entirely too much damage. And effectively there is like a set order for where you have to go. You can either go Astronos into Lakesys into Klotos, or Lakesys into Astronos into Klotos. Both those are fine. But if you do Klotos, anything that is not very last, you are actually just so fucked, and you didn't realize that it was a major decision that you had to make like forever before that. So it's really rough. But at the same time, this is like not a bad nerf. I'm interested to see how exactly this plays out. Maybe they're going to end up needing to nerf Klotos's AoE effect, but maybe the oppression change is slightly enough. All right, so then Necrotic Wake, which actually just got gutted straight into the ground. So the first thing is the Bloody Javelin and Discharge Anima hits more than 8 enemies. The total damage is distributed evenly across all targets. They're target capping the Javelin and the Anima Silence Orb, which... all right, I guess the consensus is they need to target cap more shit inside of Shadowlands, not less. So they decided that the Javelin and the Anima Orb were too egregious, but for some reason didn't fix Mark of the Master Assassin giving it a 100% crit chance, which is weird, I will admit. Also on top of that, the Kyrian armaments now persist through death. This is a great change. So this allows you to have more consistent strategies for using the Javelin on the third and the fourth boss, even potentially. So this may change like where you end up using your changing where you use your weapons. And this is like a really good change that they're going to be making, because like a lot of times if you were just like weekly no levering this dungeon, you wouldn't pick up an armament until you actually had to go to the boss, or if you just completely lose the armament, the propensity for you to just zone out or completely lose the run or whatever was really high, because the weapons were at least so super impactful. And I suspect that they're still going to be very impactful. I think that this 8 target cap thing is like not enough to really bring down the relative power of the Javelin and the Anima Orb, but it's definitely something. I think that this is more of a change targeted towards MDI style stuff. Whenever you saw groups like pulling all the Necropolis in one single pull and shit like that. But like for live keys, you were very infrequently using the anima orb or the javelin on more than 8 targets, but in the small cases that you were, yeah, this will be a slight nerf to them, but then persisting through death is actually a really big deal. Bittlebone Crossbowman reduced by 20%. That's the guy that spawns from the Necromancer. So it's one of the crossbowmen that spawns from the Necromancer. They reduced his health by 20%. Fix an issue while the Brittlebone Crossbowman shoot was ignoring armor. That's actually a really weird change. That's a really weird thing that he was ignoring armor. The Brittlebone Warrior, his damage is now reduced by 20%. Same thing, this is just another Necromancer mob. Brittlebone Mage's Frostbolt Volley reduced by 20% and cast time increased to 3.5, was 2.5 seconds. This is a great change. The biggest deal isn't necessarily the damage, like you shouldn't let this volley go through at all, but the cast time being increased to 3.5 seconds, up from 2.5, really, really good stuff from there. And then the Mage's Frostbolt damage being reduced by 36% and cast time increased to 2.5 seconds was 2. Another really great change. So they're nerfing the Necromancer while not nerfing the Necromancer directly. They're allowing you a little bit easier of a time to be able to kill the ads that are around it and deal with the mages that are absolutely terrible. So this is actually just all around the board great stuff. Corpse Harvester, health reduced by 29%. The Corpse Harvester is the mob that, okay, so it's the downstairs mob that does the suck and stun cast. This is the one that's like outside. The Corpse Collector is the one that's up top that does the AoE ability that you have to end up kicking as well. So both of the Corpse caster mobs have been nerfed pretty heavily. Not too terrible of changes. I think that these were both warranted. I'm surprised that they reduced their health, because I feel like the difficulty of these mobs are definitely in the kick rotations, but I think that the health reduction seems to be the most reasonable thing. The Stitch Vanguard, his health got reduced by 14%. I think that this is the guy that does the shield whenever he ends up casting. Just give me one moment, checking to confirm that. Yeah, so the Stitch Vanguard is the guy that does the meat shield cast that you end up having to kick. His health was reduced by 14%. I think that this guy, his health being reduced by 14% seems pretty reasonable. Nars Zuda, I actually don't know how to pronounce this word. His health was reduced by 20%. If you don't know what mob this is, I'm not really surprised. This is that mini boss that basically almost all groups skip. That is after the first boss. He does the Death Burst and like the Grim Fate abilities, and his health being reduced by 20%. Them target capping the Anima Orb now maybe makes this pack a little bit more enticing to pull. Not 100% sure, but this is at least a lot more reasonable now. But again, there's like a Skeletal Monstrosity. His health got reduced by 15% and his damage got reduced by 25%. The Skeletal Monstrosity is that patrolling bone dude that's walking around. Like this guy probably still beats up your tank pretty heavily with his shatter ability, but all in all, like these are a lot of nerfs. Now you have the Loyal Creations ad, health reduced by 24%. The Loyal Creation is the Stitch Work ad from the boss, and it's like that's actually a pretty big deal. His health being reduced by 24%, and then the Kyrian Stitchwork health reduced by 25% and melee damage reduced by 17%. These are the other ads, the patrolling dude, the Kyrian Stitchwork that does the Tenderize and the Mutilate. Like all of that stuff being nerfed by a pretty heavy amount is really important for this dungeon. For the Stitchwork in general, I think that this isn't the correct nerf. I feel like the correct nerf for this mob would have absolutely been not, or like if they would have changed the spell queuing on the Tenderize to not allow you to get 5 stacks of the Tenderize or whatever. You know, this is really, really reasonable to reduce his health by 25%, but like your tanks were getting really high on the Tenderize, and then the Mutilate, of course, which is his other ability, is an anti-kite mechanic, which is like rough. So that's all of these nerfs, a lot of health targeted nerfs. They basically nerf the shit out of this dungeon, health-wise. Then you have stuff that's targeted towards the bosses, which is like Blightbone, where the Carrion Worm's Blood Gorge applications required to trigger Carrion Eruption was increased to 5, which was 3. This is a strange change, but I guess if you don't have like a druid or a hunter in your group, or like a monk, maybe it's like a druid, a hunter, a monk, it could be a little bit rough. but I feel like getting meleeed 3 times by the Carrion Worm was a bit weird to begin with. Now up to 5 times. I'm not really going to complain. It's kind of a strange change. And then a Marth, which is the second boss. Reduce the range that the skeletons are summoned during Land of the Dead. So basically all the mobs will summon a little bit closer. Unholy Frenzy attack speed bonus reduced by 20%. This is the enrage effect that can be applied to the boss that he applies to himself randomly. And then they basically just nerf down all of the adds that is summoned on a Marth. So I think these are all good changes as well. As a whole, for Necrotic Wake, I feel like a lot of these were pretty on point for what needed to be seen on this boss. Again, like I said, Plaguefall, I think Margrave needed a little bit more of a targeted nerf towards the Infectious Rain. Sanguine Depths, I think the castigation damage needed to come down on Tarvald. Crixus needed the damage by essence absorption to be probably reduced by a little bit more than 20% even. It seems even still to be a bit high. But maybe after I see this, it will be a little bit more reasonable. Spires of Ascension. The Klotos AoE probably needed to be slapped down a little bit, but maybe the oppression damage taken increase was what actually was making me think this, and maybe this change to the oppression will be nice to see. But overall, I'm happy that they are actively looking at dungeons and potentially raids. They did some raid stuff, but we're not going over that today. I'm really glad that they're actively looking at dungeons and thinking about what needs to be changed to make them a little bit more reasonable. Again, I think that they probably need to change how Shadow Meld works with True Sight, just because like being able to meld off Pride is really, really silly and negating the full effects. Obviously, it's not like a super huge issue on live, but we've seen it a lot during MDI. We even had like the top Chinese team melding off Prides, and they're able to do like 23s and 24 keys. Yeah, but beyond that, I think that I'm surprised that there's no DOS nerfs. But everything else seemed pretty reasonable. So that's it. That's it for today. I hope you guys all have a great rest of your day, and I will see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.